everybody, very welcome to another live stream here on the Mentor Pilot channel. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. I can't believe it's Sunday again. As you all know, I am actually on vacation, all right? So that's why I'm a little bit late with this live stream. I wasn't actually planning on doing one, but then again, I know you guys were expecting me to. I didn't actually have anything else to do here on my vacation. So here I am, ready to answer your questions as always. Ready. I've already received some really interesting stuff actually on the Mentor Aviation app. We've been discussing cosmic radiation. Let's see, it also seems like we're having problems with the internet, so let's see if we can fix that a little bit before we go. We'll do it like this instead. Right. Okay, guys. We're just gonna have to wait and see if this internet connection holds up. All right. At the moment, it seems like it's working. So, like I was saying, we've had a really interesting discussion on the Mentor Aviation app today about cosmic radiation. So I thought before I start taking any other questions, I'm going to start by discussing that. So, yes. Airlines do monitor the amount of cosmic radiation that pilots are subjected to, right? We don't actually carry any equipment on board the aircraft to monitor cosmic radiation. That is only needed if you fly an aircraft that I think operates above flight level 450, 45,000 feet, or it might be even higher than that. So normal airliners like the 737 is limited to 41,000 feet. But what the companies do and what they're required to do by law is that they're following a model, okay, taking into account where the aircraft takes off, where it lands, how high it's flying, and so on. And it uses that to create a model of how much cosmic radiation a pilot is subjected to during a normal year. And a pilot can always go to the airline and ask to receive that that computation to see how much radiation it is, and it is a little bit more, right? So the amount of radiation that a pilot typically is subjected to is between 3 and 6 millisieverts per year. Okay, and that is the legal limit for a passenger to be subjected to is 1 millisieverts. Okay, so it's a little bit higher. It would be a little bit like taking a few X-rays. It's something that's similar to it. By the way, my electrician is working here on the electricity in the house, so if the lights are flickering and stuff, that's because of that, all right? But anyway, what I was going to get to is that there are differences in how much radiation you're subjected to depending on where you're flying. So, for example, if you're flying long haul, especially over the polar regions, you are likely to be subjected to much more radiation than if you're flying on lower routes, all right, not so close to the polar regions. Also, if you happen to fly during a solar flare event, so for example when there's solar storms, in that case a single flight can actually provide you with the amount of radiation that you should be subjected to during a full year. So there's tests going on for the flight planning departments of long haul flights to actually plan their flights to avoid the polar regions during solar flare events. Okay, so I don't know what just happened here, but there we go. Looks like the light's coming back again. But when it comes to the actual amount of increased cancer risk that this leads to, there has been studies shown that there is a slight increase in especially skin cancer risks for pilots that are flying a very long, full career. But we're talking a very small increase, and it's also very hard to say whether or not that increase is because of lifestyle events. For example, if you're flying as a pilot, maybe you are spending more time at the beach, maybe you're spending more time actually in, sunbathing and stuff like that, and that could actually be the reason that there's more skin cancer among pilots than something else. So it's still a little bit unsure. A study shown in the UK included about 10,000 pilots, and from 10,000 people, about 450 normally would get skin cancer. In the group of pilots, there was about 460, so about 10 more. So that gives you a little bit of a feeling of how much bigger the risk could be, but it's still not sure that that is the case. So that was what I wanted to talk about when it comes to cosmic radiation and how, you know, the airlines are dealing with it. I hope that clears things up for you. All right. So let's see, we'll take another couple of questions here. As always, guys, if you have really important questions that you want me to answer, then use the super chat. I will use that primarily, and then the questions from the Mentour Aviation app. Filip Stolzenberg, har du hört talas om BA Flight Academy? Och är de att rekommendera? So I'll translate that. Basically, that is if I've heard about the BAA, Baltic Aviation Academy Flight Academy. If I could recommend them. Yes, I've heard of them. They do quite a lot of videos on YouTube, actually, I think that you can check out. Whether or not, what kind of quality they have, I am not sure. All right. Fortunately, I haven't checked them out, but I haven't heard anything negative about them, and I do believe that they're in partnership with quite a few airlines, like Wizz Air, for example, and that would indicate that they are providing high quality training, because airlines very rarely team up with flight schools that are not serious about what they're doing. So I would say that they probably do. I can't vouch for them because I haven't checked them out, but you know, go into the Mentour Aviation app. Actually, I think there are a few people who are in BAA at the moment and will be able to answer questions that you might have. Just go in the videos. There's a video called Flight Schools and Flight School Contact, and if you look at the description on that one, you'll find all of the different flight schools that have people there representing them inside of the app that you can ask a question to in the chat immediately. Just tag the username and they will answer as quickly as they can. Cool, I'll take some more questions here from the actual chat here for us for a change. Does it matter what country you pass your ATPL and your licenses in? It does and it doesn't. It depends a little bit. If you're inside of the EASA countries, as in the European Union countries, then it doesn't matter that much, okay? What matters is normally the school that you're in and whether or not that school has a good reputation or not. But at the moment, the need for pilots are so big that as long as you have your licenses and you have reasonable first-time passes on your license, your exams and stuff like that, you're likely to be able to be called for an interview anyway. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Then there might be countries that are in the world somewhere where the flight training is recognized as not being great. Now I can't give any examples of that because that would be wrong of me, but the airlines definitely pay a little bit of attention of where you've done your training, if that's the question that you had. What is your thoughts about unrestricted, unregulated drone use? Well, my thought on that is that it's not a good idea. Right? The more drones that are around, the more potential risk there is to commercial aviation, especially since people don't have common sense always, and they use the drones to take cool videos that they can put up on YouTube about approaching aircraft and stuff. That means that they're actually flying into the flight path where we are. And I mean, one of those drones can actually weigh quite a lot, and if we're meeting that at 300 kilometers per hour and it weighs a kilo or something, you can imagine the kind of damage that it can actually give at a fairly critical phase of flight. So I think that drone use should be restricted to certain areas, and to a certain extent it should be restricted to people who've actually done some kind of course to know where they should be flying and where they shouldn't be flying. Okay, small drones that can only, you know, go a couple of meters away from the transmitter and stuff, not so bad. But the bigger drones that can fly longer, further and faster, they should be regulated in some way. Right, so why are there two exits for the APU on the 737-800? I believe that one is actually not an exhaust, it's actually an air intake. So there's not actually two exhausts, it's just one air intake. There's one main air intake, which is on the right side, that takes in most of the air that's actually needed to run the jet engine, but then there's cooling air intakes as well. I really hope that my electrician stops doing that soon, because otherwise this is going to be really hard to do. Cool. I'll take some questions from the Mentour Aviation app here as well, which I'm hoping that you've all downloaded by now. So, Have you ever, so from Drew 28, have you ever had a moment where the weather was so bad that you almost crashed? No, right. These questions, they keep popping up, okay, and they show a little bit of a lack of understanding on how we pilots operate. So we don't take risks if we can avoid them. This means that we're not going to go down and try to land in weather where there is a chance of crashing the aircraft. If there's a chance of crashing the aircraft, we're going to divert and go somewhere else. And we would know about the different weather phenomena fairly early on the planning stage. And if we see that the weather is really bad, well, then we are going to take extra fuel. We might be holding for a while to see if it gets better, and then we're just going to go to our diversion alternate. We're not going to go in and say, well, I think I can make it. No, that's not how this works, all right? Then, of course, you can always be surprised by things that you didn't expect, like freak weather phenomena and short final, maybe really heavy updrafts and stuff like that. But whenever we feel that the approach is not going satisfactory, as in the approach is not stabilized, which is something I will do a video about, we go around. All right, the two of us, anyone can call a go around at any point, and then we just execute a go around, and we go somewhere else. So that's how that works. So, Captain Shalin, what is your favorite hotel and which you may visit on layovers? Since we don't do much layovers, I don't really have any favorite hotels. The favorite hotels that I have, they are close to the airport, so it doesn't take much time to go to and from work. They have a great breakfast menu, and they're quiet and the beds are comfy. If those criteria are met, I can sleep in pretty much any hotel, right? And we know flight crew doesn't, at least in my airline and in most other short-haul airlines, they don't really sit in the really, really fancy hotels. There we go. So now the light is back on again. It's basically just to make sure that they fulfill the quiet and the comfortable criterion, right? So I don't really care. That's the short answer to that. So, as someone else said, what types of maths do you utilize? Well, the thing here that you have to understand, guys, is that when it comes to your math knowledge, it's mostly required during your actual training. Okay, so when you're doing your ATPL theory, you're going to have to do some quite complicated math calculations when it comes to the lift formula, when it comes to calculating meteorology, when it comes to navigation and things like that, right? So that's complicated. Also, when you're flying your IFR, so your initial IFR, you might have to calculate things like, what kind of closure rate you have on a DME arc, how far do you have to fly in order to fly between different radials at different distances from a VOR, which is trigonometry. Okay, so trigonometry, simple trigonometry is fairly often used. When you come to my type of aircraft and modern airliners, we're not doing most of this by ourselves. The FMC mostly does it, right? We have to have the knowledge in the background, which is why we have to do the training about it, but you don't sit every day and calculate complicated mathematical formulas. What we do, however, is we calculate the distances we need to descend, for example. But that's really simple stuff. It's like 3 times your altitude plus 1 nautical mile needed for each 10 knots to decelerate down to 200. Things like that is good formulas to use. So, for example, if you are at 30,000 feet, you will need 90 miles. And if you're 250 knots, you will need 95 miles approximately to start descend and to decelerate back to be able to take out flaps for your approach. So now that's really, really simple stuff. Okay, there are other stuff as well that might be slightly more complicated, but we're not, it's mainly for your initial training and for your ATPL exams and for your IFR training that you're going to really need to be kind of quick in your head. So Bikey4 on the super chat, thank you very much for contributing to the channel. On the subject of drones, do you think there should be some rudimentary transponder required for certain drones, like high flying? Yeah, that could be one idea. The problem is, of course, when you start to have a lot of different drones, and transponders are normally given codes by air traffic controls for air traffic control to be able to kind of track them and know what is what, and that is going to be very hard. But of course, if there is a generic system of transponder where a drone has a specific code, that could be a good idea. Something that just shows that this drone is now above the limit of 1,000 feet, for example, so it could be tracked and warned about. So not a bad idea. I don't think it's going to happen though, because it will require quite a lot of battery and quite a lot of weight to be carried, relatively to the size of the drone. But anyway, Jake Harvey says hi. Hi Jake, thank you for contributing to the channel. Jake Schroeder says, if you could change one thing about the 737 NG, what would it be? Ooh, great question. Right, on the system side, it would probably be to let the cabin crew control the temperature. Okay, because 90% of all the calls from the cabin is regarding changes of temperature, and the temperature selectors in the cockpit is like the ones on a Volkswagen Beetle, not the new one, the old one. Right, it's just like warm or cold, and you turn them around, and 1 millimeter on one aircraft might mean that it becomes really hot, and on another aircraft it doesn't do anything. So I mean, if you buy an aircraft for $50 million, you would expect to at least have climate control on it, but no, not really. So that could be upgraded, and it could definitely be given some kind of temperature control, at least secondary temperature control to the cabin crew. If I could choose to change something bigger, it would be to give a little bit more space in the cockpit, because the cockpit is quite small, quite cramped. It's like sitting inside of a closet, two people sitting inside of a closet for 12 hours and having very little room to put your bag and stuff like that. So it's old school still. It would require, like the Airbus has much more room, much more air inside the cockpit, and it's nice from a kind of working conditions point of view. Cool, more questions from the super chat, guys. I'll go to the Mentour Aviation app for now. By the way, the app is upgraded. You have the links to download the app here in the description, as well as if you want to join up with my Patreon crew, there's also links down here, right? It's much easier now to use the chat inside of the app. I've gotten some really good feedback. And by the way, there's a new version of the app that's being released tomorrow, which has some bug fixes, because there were some bugs reported by some of you guys, some of the users, specifically people that was in Turkey for some reason, and that has been sorted now. So there will be a new version fixing all of those little bugs coming out very, very soon. So, Pet Doctor in the chat, when you go for a sim training, do you know you will be working on a specific task, or do they surprise you with random emergencies? Also, what do air crews tend to think of the movie Airplane? It's on my all-time favorites. Right. To answer your first question, we do know approximately what's going to happen. As in, at least the check tends to be fairly the same all the time. All right. So we work on a 3-year cycle. During those 3 years, all the different systems inside of the aircraft needs to be checked in one way or another. But every single check, it's kind of following the same thing. You take off. You have some kind of technical problem that is, included in those 3-year cycles. It will require you to either continue or divert back to your original airport, and then you're going to go in and you're going to do a non-precision approach followed by a circling approach. After that, there's going to be a low-vis session with a category 3 approach to, or category 3 takeoffs. Sorry. Low-vis takeoff, category 3 approach to a go-around, category 3 approach to a landing, not necessarily in that order. Then there's going to be the single engine part, which is takeoff with an engine failure and a full circuit with handling all the checklist, single engine ILS to a go-around, single engine ILS to a landing, emergency evacuation because of some type of, possibly a fire, and a rejected takeoff. All of those things has to be in the check. But on top of that, there's also going to be loads of different problems. Might be flat problems, might be hydraulic problems, might be problems with electricals. That might come as a surprise. But then we also have the training day. And the training day is full of things that the company has picked up from the SMS, from the safety management system, things that we need to practice. So, for example, like I'm talking about in one of my videos, we had volcanic ash. So we're covering volcanic ash in this the RST that I'm doing right now. And on top of that, there's other more, interesting stuff that it's there, but it's a training day. It's not a check in the same way. It's there to increase the knowledge on the skill of the pilots. So the second day is a pure training day, and it's always quite enjoyable, even though pilots tend to have a problem with the simulator, as in they don't really like to go in. And no one really likes to be checked on the professionalism, but it's a really, really good tool. All right, so Linshu Chang, hi Peter, would you mind elaborating on the various transponder modes on the 737NG? When do you switch modes, and will you manually switch on TARA? Yeah, so we have off, standby, altimeter off, and TARA, that's the ones that I remember just off the top of my head. So that's altitude on at the end. So basically we have a mode S transponder. There's also mode C transponders and mode A transponders. Mode A transponder just shows this where you are, right? It doesn't show altitude or anything like that. Mode C transponder does show altitude and can, because of that, generate a resolution advisory for TCAS quick aircraft. But a mode S transponder, which we have, also transmits all other types of stuff, like for example the MCP modes that we're using, what we've put into the MCC in terms of MCP altitude, speed to a certain extent, and things like that. Now, when we're on the ground, when we're taxiing in and out, we have the transponder to altitude off. All right, that's just to show the ground radar where we are, but without causing potential TARAs for people coming in on final. Okay. When we're being cleared to enter the runway, we switch it over to TARA, which is then the full transponder mode, which can generate a TCAS RA. And guys, if you haven't checked out my, I actually have a full video, both a briefing video explaining how TCAS works and how we do it, and also inside of the Mentour Aviation app, there is a playlist that shows us that shows me actually flying a TCAS RA, how we're doing it, and what we're thinking about. So check that out if you haven't already gotten that playlist. Anyway, then we fly with TARA as a mode throughout our flight, and then after landing we switch it to altitude off, and then standby as we get in, and we're stuck at the gate just as we're shutting down the engines. So those are the kind of modes that we're using. Robert Clary and thank you very much. I think you might have a question that didn't come through the super chat. In that case, Mentour Aviation app, and just go into submit feedback, and that will send me an email, and just write super chat question, and I will answer it to you there. All right. Thank you very much for supporting. Ian Jill, good to see you here, Ian. News that Qantas might start training its own pilots. Must be good news if it happens. Have a great break with your family. Yeah, like I have been predicting for so many live streams now. If you go back to my live streams for the last 3 years, you would see that even in the beginning I started predicting that this will happen. The airlines will not pay for training if they don't have to. Okay, so a good indication of whether or not pilots are needed, if there's a pilot shortage, is to check whether or not the airlines are starting to pay for things. And now more and more airlines are starting to pay for things, which means that probably they need pilots, they can't find them, and hence they're starting to pay for it. So it's yes, to answer your question, Ian, it's an extremely good indication, not only for the lucky people who are actually accepted into the Qantas program, but also for everyone else that is looking for a job inside of the industry. It's an indication that the industry is doing very, very well indeed. Great, more questions. Ludens, Mentor, I'm new to the channel, and being from Germany, I can't quite figure out where you're from. Would you mind letting me know? Well, of course. Now, I am Swedish, born and bred, and I will be going back to Sweden on Wednesday. Together with my boys, and I'll be there for a week. So I'm Swedish, but my accent is both because I've been in England for about 2.5 years to pick up a little bit there. I have worked together with a lot of Irish people, so I'm picking up a little bit of that. And now I'm in Spain, so I'm picking up a little bit of that. So it's a big mix of everything, and this is why people have such a problem to kind of figure out where I'm from. But yes, I am Swedish. And if you listen closely, you will probably hear my Scandinavian accent in the background of all of this. Right, let's take some questions from the normal chat as well. What do you think about the 747? I think the 747 is a fantastic aircraft, right? I think it's one of the most beautiful aircraft that has ever been built, and I think that it's, especially thinking that it's so old, is extremely advanced. All right, the fact that it's actually one of the quickest aircrafts out there, even though it's as big, just shows you something. The 747 can fly much faster than a 737 can, and that is incredible. So yeah, I would love to fly one. However, I think unfortunately the 747's time is running out, as well as all of the really super big aircraft are. And I might do another podcast on that subject coming forward. So, Kalidor, thank you very much, Kalidor. What's the method in Europe to scare birds away from the runway? Once I departed from OR Tambos in Sue, I don't know exactly what that is. They used a car with a guy inside that shot blanks from a gun. Yeah, we do that. There's several ways. All right. The most common way is that people send out bird scaring equipment. They go out and they shoot basically fireworks to scare the birds away from the runway area. Other ways include things like lasers. So in Paris, Beauvais, for example, where we fly, there is a laser that is being shot across the grass. It's about grass level, and so you can see the laser kind of going forth and back, and that apparently bugs the bird a lot. They think it's freaky and they fly away. So those are, once they're installed, probably cheaper, and they're on all the time. But on the other side, it only really works when it gets a little bit darker. Then you have trained falcons. You see that in some of the bigger airports as well, where people are going out with trained falcons, and the falcons are actually going out and hunting birds, scaring other birds away. Obviously, when there's little traffic, and so that we don't suck the actual falcon in, because that would be sad. But on a more bigger scale, every time we have a bird strike, we have to write a bird strike report, and that is being sent to the airport. And if there's enough, if there's a lot of them, the airlines and the authorities are going to come in and say to the airport, listen, you guys need to do something. And that normally includes actually finding a little bird, opening up the stomach, see what the bird has been eating, and figuring out, okay, so the birds are here because they like eating this stuff, so let's remove that completely from the airport. So that's a lot of what the airports are doing. They're trying to make the airport less interesting for the birds to be at, hence having less bird strikes. But bird strikes will continue to occur. It's very, very hard to get completely rid of it. Mentor, what do you think about the approach to Paphos, and what do you like about it? I haven't been to Paphos in ages now. I remember that it could be a little bit tricky at times, but I never had any big problems with it. I like Paphos because it's beautiful there. But it was a long time since I was there, so I can't remember exactly what the problems were. If there were any, I might be mixing it up with some other island down there in the archipelago as well. So, Mason Rice, why do some planes not have a window on the back row? For example, the MD-88. Yeah, so the MD-88, I'm not sure exactly why the MD-88 doesn't have it. Like I did a video of on the 737 that you're locking a window on one side because of the air rising up there through the duct. So check out that video if you're interested in it. In some cases, the windows might have been taken away because of space saving, or they put a toilet there or something like that, depending a little bit on how the aircraft is built. In the case of the MD-88, I'm not entirely sure. Right, so let's see. So we have more super chat questions here. On the subject on the 747, do you think that there is enough life in the fuselage design that Boeing could convert the airframe to twin engines? No. They could probably. It's probably completely doable, but generally speaking, an aircraft design is designed for the amount of engines that it was originally designed. And if you have to redesign it for two engines, there are probably stuff that we haven't thought about that is going to be a problem. Okay, so in the case of the 747, I doubt that you actually have two engines even now with the fantastic huge 777 engines. That would be enough to actually lift the aircraft that have give sufficient performance to it. So you would need to create two enormous engines, and then you would have other problems. So generally speaking, if you want to do those kind of redesigns, it's better to build from scratch and make it better to start with. So I think the 747 is going to stay with as efficient engines as you can possibly have until it's not economic anymore to drive, and then it's going to disappear, unfortunately. Spillebug, thank you very much. Once again, if you had a question that didn't come through, then go into the Mentour Aviation app and send the question through the submit feedback function there with the title Super Chat, and I will answer it for you. So, also on the 747, can you see a time that large aircraft such as the 747 and 380 will be suitable for point-to-point model aviation industry continues to grow? Yeah, I mean, anything is possible. And I think surely in Asia, for example, where you might have an enormous demand for shorter point-to-point flights, it might well work. I think the only airline that actually managed to get the 380 to be economical is Emirates, and that's because the hub they're using actually works all year around. This is one of the main problems that the 380 has, that a 380 is fantastic if you can fill it up, but generally speaking there's always a high and a low season, and when you're not filling it up it costs a lot of money to run. Alright, so you have to have a position like Emirates does, for example, where you're in a space that actually works both during summer and winter. Will you ever fly an Airbus? Probably. I don't know. It's very hard to say whether or not I'm going to fly an Airbus or not. It's depending on what happens in the future. I can't predict that at the moment. It doesn't look like it, but you never know. Ian Gill on the super chat. Thank you very much, Ian, for contributing to the channel. It's great to see the support that you guys are giving. And I hope you like the channel so far, by the way. Continue to send in questions that you want me to answer. I have a bunch of new videos lined up. Obviously now I'm on vacation and I'm actually planning, especially when I'm in Sweden, I'm not going to be making any videos then. I'm not going to be sitting and editing stuff. I'm going to concentrate on my family. But I have at least one video that I've lined up that's going to come in between, and then there's probably going to be a little bit of a break, maybe with a rerun again, and then more stuff coming. But I always want your feedback, because if I get a lot of questions from you guys and I see that there's a lot of people who wants to talk about the same stuff here, well then I'm going to make a video about that. Okay, and I'm also probably going to start going into flight schools a little bit more, showing you what you can expect, how to prepare, things like that from specific flight schools that I've actually checked out and that holds a high quality. And make sure that you check out mentorpilot.com. There, mentorpilot.com, because at the moment there's not much happening there, but at the moment I am working on starting to feature flight schools. Okay, and I will be working together with flight schools, both doing MCC courses and doing initial courses, schools that I trust. Okay, schools that I've checked out myself and that I know can provide you with high quality training, even though they might not be cheap. Right, that's not a criterion for me. I am more working on trying to convince airlines to take up more of the training cost. But I want you guys to have some kind of reference, and I'm going to use the Mentour Aviation app and mentorpilot.com to show you which these schools are and what they do. Okay. What fuel do planes take? Well, we have Jet A1 normally. Think of it kind of like diesel. It's very, very similar to diesel. So, did you study in Sweden? Which aviation school? I did study in Sweden. I went to a government-sponsored program there, the Flyggymnasium, and the school that actually did my training was Scandinavian Aviation Academy. It was called Bromma Flygskola back then, and now it's called OSM Flight Academy, which it's one of the schools that I'm thinking about actually working together with, because I've done my training there myself. I know what they stand for. Samuel May on the super chat. Thank you, Samuel. Flying your airline from Copenhagen to Stansted soon. Can you leave a note to the crew letting me in the cockpit? No, I can't. But what I can advise you to do is that if you're flying with my airline, you're not going to be able to go into the cockpit during flight. Okay, that's just not going to happen. But the biggest chance you have to come in and say hello and visit and maybe take a picture is after the flight. So what I would advise you to do is talk to the number one, the purser. That's the one that's sitting on the left. If you look forward in the aircraft, when they're sitting down in their seats, she should be sitting to the left, closest to the door. Okay, that's the purser aboard. If you talk to him or her, tell them that you are an aviation enthusiast and that you would love to say hello after landing if the pilots have time. And she will then, when you come up and you go out, go out through the front, just remind him or her, and they will definitely ask. Now, there is a chance that they might say no, okay, and that is because there might be other stuff that are, especially if you're flying in the standstill, there's always loads of stuff going on there, delays and trying to find ground crew to disembark the aircraft, stuff like that. So it's not 100% that you will be able to, but in most cases they will take time. Definitely if it's me, I'll take time and let you come in and say hello and look at stuff. So, Jake Schroeder, what is the closest you've come to an accident emergency, either due to weather, mechanical cause, etc.? Did it make you worry the next time you flew? I haven't been close to one of those, touch wood, because of what I said in the beginning of the video, which is what we don't take risks and we don't fly with aircraft that are not working. The only times that this happens is if something major happened, like the Southwest guys that had a catastrophic engine failure. Things like that, you never really know if that's going to happen. But in 99.99% of the cases, the only kind of failures you have are tiny little things like a single pump that's not working and is backed up by 3 other pumps, or a tiny little electrical thing or a bulb not working or stuff like that, and that obviously doesn't lead towards an emergency. So I've been in places where the weather was worse, especially when I was a first officer. I remember one time I think it was in Oslo, where the weather was significantly worse than what we had expected, and we needed to divert, and we didn't have the great amount of fuel that you would like to have in order to take your time, so we had to divert on that, but it worked out fine in the end anyway. The biggest technical issue I've had was a flap problem. The flap's not coming out properly, so I landed with reduced flaps, but still not an issue as long as you have a long runway to land on. It's the passengers didn't even notice. So good. Edita G, thank you. Will you make a video on of you flying an Airbus simulator? Maybe. We'll see if I can do that together with someone, because I don't fly Airbus, so me flying an Airbus simulator would be a lot of me sitting and looking like that. That's the thing, an Airbus and a Boeing are they're aircraft, both of them. If I get into the aircraft and I'm flying it, I can probably fly it, but actually starting it up, for example, I probably wouldn't be able to do, because it's completely different. It is not like the difference between a Volvo and an Audi. We're talking the difference between a pushback truck and an Audi. It's completely 2 different animals. But yeah, if I find someone who wants to dare me to fly an Airbus, then that I will do. I think it would probably make a quite fun video to watch. Have you ever flown to American countries? Yes, I have. I've been in Seattle to bring back a brand spanking new 737 to Europe. So that I've done. I've flown from Seattle to Dublin. How can you be so positive to your fans when you do such tiring job and maintain a healthy family life? What is your secret? The secret is to smile a lot. And the secret is to spend a couple of minutes every day to think about the things that you're grateful for. And I have so many things to be grateful of, so it is fairly easy to stay happy. And I want to show this to you. I want to show that it is perfectly possible to have a good family life, to be a positive person, and to work, because you do work hard. I do work a lot with this channel at the moment. I work a lot with my job. So it does kind of wear on you, but positivity helps that. The more positive you are, the more easy it's going to be to go through hard stuff. And that's the kind of philosophy that I'm using. So, hi Mentor, do you recommend getting my medical exam before start with my PPL if I want to be a commercial pilot? Yes, I do. Because, well, the PPL, you only need a class 2 for that, but I will probably go for a class 1 immediately if you're planning to go for a commercial training, because otherwise, if you can't get a class 1, it's better to know that beforehand and to kind of plan accordingly. So, definitely. Will you make a video with Captain Joe? No, I don't think so. Right, we were planning on doing that, but then his airline went bust and he had to go on to a different type. And as you've seen now, he's not uploading videos as regularly anymore. So I think he's fully busy with getting into his new company, and I haven't been in contact with him for months, so I don't think so. Cool. Right. Well, on the topic of flying an Airbus, if you were flying as passenger on an Airbus and if there was a circumstance of piloting capacitation, would you be able to assist? Yes, I would be able to assist. As in, it would be much easier to instruct me, who has more than 10,000 hours in the air, on how to get the airplane down than a passenger. Okay, that's obvious because I know what all the phraseology is. I will be able to ask for the things that I want to know. For example, all right, so I want to get the flaps out. Where are the flaps? That's just an example. Obviously, the flaps will be easy to find, but maybe I want to know exactly how the autopilot works, or how I can disconnect it, and how it will react when I do things like that. So yes, I would be able to. I would also be able to read checklists, or I would be able to sit and take the radio and take all of the radio calls to take load off the operating pilot. So that's probably what would happen if I was ever to have to help in an Airbus. If I was the only one on board that could help out, then I would be pilot monitoring, doing all of the radio calls, helping out with checklists and stuff. I wouldn't be flying it because I'm not trained to. So that's probably how I would help. And I am planning on doing a video giving you 17 different steps on how you could land an airliner. Would you be interested in that? Just write yes if that's the case, because I've actually found out that it is 17 steps needed. I did an app together with a Swedish company where we did exactly that, right? Where you can go and go to step by step exactly what you needed to do, even if you had absolutely no idea, as in nothing. You had never flown a flight simulator in your life, then your grandma could have gone through that, providing that she had nerves of steel and knew how to find or talk on the radio. So yeah, I am thinking of doing that. It might be a slightly longer video because these 17 steps, if I'm going to show them to you, will take a little bit of time. But I think it would be a fairly cool video to watch. Have you ever flown through a Rome airport? Yes, I've been to both Fiumicino and Ciampino. I'm a lot to Ciampino actually. Right, step 1, find parachute and jump. No, that wouldn't help anyone. Right, so let's see, how much annual leave do you get a year? I get 28 days annual leave. So if you couple that together with a roster that is normally a 5-4 roster, it means that for 5 days of annual leave, you actually get 4 plus 5 plus 4. So you have 13 days of annual leave taken for 5. So that can give you a little bit of a sense of how much annual leave you get if you take all those 28 days. If 5 days gives you 13, another 5 days takes you another 13. So it becomes quite a lot of leave at the end. Right, guys, so we're coming into 11:30 here soon, or 11:15. I'm not going to be able to do this for much longer, so if you guys have any more important questions, then use the super chat now, okay? Otherwise, I'm going to take some more questions from the Mentour Aviation app here. Will you make that video that I suggested, common weaknesses and how to fix them? From Miguel. Yeah, well, the thing is, though, the common weaknesses is a little bit tricky to do videos about because they do differ quite a lot. There are some common ones that you can actually work on, so that might happen, okay? But it's not something that I have planned right now. I need to prepare that quite well. How is it to be a passenger when you're pilot? It's great. It means you're not working. It means you can sit there and chill, relax. You know exactly what's going on, more or less. So it's very chilled out. Mentor, what do you think about Cyprus Airways? As far as I know, it's a great airline. I don't know much about them, to be perfectly honest. But you know, when you don't know much, it normally means that it's good. So, Emily the Aviator, Mentor, are you excited to fly the MAX? What kind of training will you need to go through, if any, before you can start flying in one? That's a great question. Yes, I would love to fly the MAX. Yes, it will probably happen in the beginning of next year. And the training needed is still being decided. But it is likely that it's going to be a difference training without any simulator training needed. So, because the types are extremely similar to each other, then there's going to be a fairly comprehensive CBT, as in a computer-based training module that you have to go through and do some exams on. Obviously, you're going to need to read up on the manuals. That is going to be slightly different for the MAX because the engines are different, the landing gear is slightly different, the screens are different, the performance is slightly different, and so on. But actually operating it, if someone would put me into a MAX today, I would probably be able to go in and easily take it in and land because it's not that different. All right, so there's just a little bit of difference training to be done. How much is still being decided. The airline will come up with a plan, and then that has to be approved by the aviation authorities that regulate the airline. So they are still working on that. It's going to be different for all airlines that's taking in the MAX, basically. Piers Townsend, thank you very much for contributing in the super chat. So let's see. Have you ever encountered wind shear? I haven't actually had. Yes, I did get a wind shear warning once actually, but that was after touchdown, funnily enough, which shouldn't really happen. So we didn't have to do the wind shear escape maneuver. But I've been very close to actual wind shear. Yes, it can be quite bad. I had to do go-arounds for reasons similar to wind shear, but didn't actually reach wind shear levels. I could just do a normal go-around. But otherwise, if you do reach wind shear, then you need to do a wind shear escape maneuver, which it's a fairly very violent maneuver. Good fun to do in simulator, not so good fun to do in real life. So, Captain Shalin, Mentor, are you a big Top Gear Grand Tour fan like me? I love cars. How's the Porsche, by the way? I just finished watching an episode actually of Top Gear just before I started the live stream. I do like cars. Okay, I'm not an expert in cars, but I do like cars. This is why I've owned 2 Porsches now. The Porsche is doing great. I'm actually having it in the shop now, upgrading a little bit of the navigation equipment and the speakers because I wanted better sound in it. So it's in the shop. Also because I'm redoing the entire down floor of my house and I didn't want it to be covered with stone dust. So yeah, it's doing great. Jordan calls, do you think it would be a good idea for there to be an ability to send a signal to a plane to tell it to autoland in the extremely rare case both pilots are incapacitated? Yes and no. I could see such a system be potentially hacked, which would be not a good thing. I could see potentially the benefits of that. However, there hasn't been many occasions of dual pilot incapacitation, to be perfectly honest. At least not something that air traffic control would notice quickly enough to do something about. If something happens, it's been because people haven't understand what's going on, like in the case of the Air France that crashed over the Atlantic, and they both sat there and did stuff but wasn't the right stuff, and they couldn't do anything from air traffic control anyway. So I don't think that it will ever happen. What I do think is that Boeing and Airbus are probably working on ways to eliminate one of the 2 pilots. Maybe replacing it with some kind of artificial intelligence or a flight dispatcher type figure that's doing the pilot monitoring job for several airlines at the time, several airplanes at the time. I know that there are prototypes out there, but unlikely that they will ever be implemented or approved. Okay, these are just brainstorming to try to reduce costs, but no, I can't really see it happening. I've done videos on this, so check it out. GIF637, could you do some videos of the systems of the aircraft with detailed video of the actual components like hydraulics, pressurization and landing gear? Yeah, I am planning to start doing that. Okay, I have already promised that I'm going to do a video about the pressurization system that will come. Landing gear and brakes and reverse thrust is going to probably come in the same in the same but a separate episode. Hydraulic systems are probably coming. The problem that I have with that is that I'm not sure how many are actually interested in watching it. All right, you guys, the 420 that are here right now, you will probably love it, all of you, and all of the ones that are watching my live streams, which is around 8,000 people on a normal day, will probably like it. Now, the channel also consists to a large extent of people who are not pilots and not flight sim enthusiasts and doesn't really want that much detail. They just want stuff explained. So that's the kind of hold off that I need to do, right? So I need to be able to give something to people who just want to know approximately how a system works, not go into the nitty-gritty details. And then I also want to keep you guys, who are my core viewers, my Patreons and my supporters, I want to keep you happy as well. So the likely is that there's going to be some kind of mix coming up in the channel where I'll do every other episode a little bit more fun and easy to watch, more interesting for general public, the traveling public, and every other episode might be a little bit more technical, going into, right, so what is the hydraulic system A, how is it connected to the hydraulic system B, how are the flight control surfaces being connected and stuff like that. But yeah, Kif, I will be doing more technical videos for the simple reason that there's only so many times you can explain why the engines are flat on the 737, for example. Do you work night shifts? No, I don't. This is one of the great things with working for my airlines, that we do not do any night shifts. We do late shifts, which means that you'll maybe land after midnight, and if you're delayed, you might end up flying into the window of circadian low, which is around 2 o'clock at night and so on. But that's only on very rare occasions. Most of the time you land at midnight or before midnight, and you take off from about 6 to 7 o'clock in the morning. What's the favorite route you've ever flown? Well, that has to be the one from Seattle to Dublin. 10 hours over the pole, fantastic northern lights, beautiful, absolutely amazing, and alone in a 737, which is also cool. Okay, how long does it take to become a captain or a senior first officer? That differs between different airlines. Okay, so if you're working for an airline like I am, who's expanding rapidly and who needs pilots constantly, well then, if you play your cards right and you do all, you read up, you have good training results, and you show that you're mature, well then you can go from being a first officer to a senior first officer in about a year and a half, and from a senior first officer to captain to another year and a half to 2 years. So we're talking about 3-4 years from starting as a brand new cadet to being a captain. But that is an extremely short period. Normally, if you're flying from one of the flag carriers or one of the airlines that are not expanding as quickly, it might take up to 10 years to go from new to captain. That depends on seniority. Then basically people have to leave or die before there are captain positions available, which can take a long time. Good. 10 hours in 737. If so, that sounds like fun. It was fun. It was really fun, actually. Jordan calls. When is that TV show you're in coming out? How did you know that? I don't know. Actually, I sent a message to the producers about that just today. There is a TV show. I will be featured in it. I will not have a dominant role in any way, but yes, I will be, and you will hear about it. If that's, well, you will see about it as well. I don't know exactly where it's going to be shown. It looks like maybe the UK and maybe Australia, but we'll see. I will tell you. Cool. Let's see. Hi, Petri. Just wanted to stop by and say hi. Hi. Keep up the great work from Kihan Kok. Thank you. I will try to. So, let's see. So, actually, this is interesting. So, I've just got an email from Peter Townsend about the super chat question. So, I might as well answer that now. So, FAA medicals. I'm 15 years old. People say to go ahead and get a class 1 medical done. Yet you have to renew that medical each year, and that costs money and isn't much use for a 15-year-old at the moment, although I will be an airline pilot within a decade. I was wondering what the difference between class 1, 2 and 3 medicals were FAA, and I'd like to start my flight training. All right. So the exact difference is if you just go into the FAA homepage and search for medicals, you will find exactly what the differences are. But what I can say is I agree with you. There is no point at 15 to start getting your class 1 medical unless you're going to start your training, okay? Unless you just are interested in generally in knowing whether or not you're fit. But I would just, concentrate on school right now, getting the grades, understanding everything, finding a way to become a pilot, as in finding which flight school you're going to be using and why. And then once you're starting to get closer, then go in and do a class 1 medical to make sure everything is okay. Most of the cases, if you don't have anything that you know about that's going to stop you, like color blindness, diabetes, or heart diseases of any sort like that, in that case, most people actually do get through the class 1 medical. Okay, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, and definitely just wait until it's time for you to start training. Robert Clary, thank you very much on the super chat. I don't know if you had a question. In that case, do exactly what Mr. Townsend just did, which is send me a question through the Mentour Aviation chat. Right, do you usually fly to Budapest? I live near the airport, and every time I see your airline, I think about your channel. Yeah, actually, I have flown to Budapest quite a few times. During the winter, I was there 2 times. Both of the times, there was horrible weather and really a lot of de-icing and delays and slots, unfortunately. But I like the airport, and I definitely like the people that are working there. They're fantastic people. So yeah, I've flown there, and thank you for thinking about me and the channel. Now guys, before I go, make sure that you check out mentorpilot.com, right? Go in there right now and look around. There's a chat there that you can hang out on, and I hope that you've got the Mentor Aviation app as well. The reason I'm pushing my own stuff all the time, you probably have noticed with this channel, is because I am trying to build this community, okay? The more people I have in there, the more dynamic it becomes, the better it becomes, okay? And if you have the app, please go to the App Store and give it a good and positive review, okay? If you have constructive feedback, something that you think I should be doing differently and stuff, use the submit feedback function in the app. Please do that. Because then I can work on it, okay? If it goes out in the App Store, people are just going to, just going to sound like the app is no good, and people won't download it, and it won't help me or the channel or the community to build. So if you have constructive feedback that you want me to change, send it through the app. Otherwise, go and give it a grading and review. It greatly helps the app to become more visible in the App Store, which is extremely important if you want it to become big. Right, guys, that is it. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Keep following the channel, keep telling people about the channel, keep doing whatever you're doing to follow your dreams and goals. I will be here to be your support, your positive ray of light in the night. And for those of you who are my patrons, I know there's quite a few who's been joining up as patrons lately. If you want to have a private chat with me, if you have something that you have thought about, something that you want to talk about, if you're at the top levels of my Patreon list, you just have to send me a message through Patreon and we can schedule in a private chat, right? I've done some fantastic chat with patrons in the last couple of weeks, and it's a great way, but I have kind of limited that personal interaction to my patrons because it just becomes too much of everything otherwise. It's the same with people who are sending me direct messages through Instagram. Instagram, I use that as a portal for you guys to see how my everyday life is, right? So I put picture from my personal life, picture from the cockpit, picture from outside the aircraft, things like that. But I don't use it as a messaging portal because I can't be answering all my emails, the app chat, the YouTube comments, and the direct message. I have to limit it some way. So if you have questions that you want to send me directly, use the app. If you want to talk to me face to face and actually discuss stuff, then become a patron. All right? Have an absolutely fantastic day, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.